The show was brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is your number one source for the best deals on sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, and a whole lot more. Go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app and use promo code BLUESEATS for $20 off your first purchase. That's promo code BLUESEATS only at SeatGeek, the official ticketing partner of From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast. Let there be live. The city of brotherly love, Philadelphia. At least that's what they call it. What's going on, Rangers fans? My name is Jimmy Fanizzi, and this is From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast presented by SeatGeek. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BlueSeats94 and use the hashtag BlueSeats to chat with us on any and all topics at hand. Also, make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on all audio platforms, and be sure to rate us 5 stars. It would mean the world to us. Yes, all satire and fun on this edition of the Rivalry Tour. Bit of an announcement to make on that, by the way. Next year, effective in the year 2025, the Rivalry Tour will be undergoing a name change. I kind of had a few ideas of what to rename the Rivalry Tour, only because I don't want to take anything away from the Rangers Ed podcast. They've been doing it way longer than I have, so because of that, I want to respect them, and it's going to be undergoing a name change effective next season, so be on the lookout for future announcements on that. But with all of that being said, today, our next stop is indeed in Philadelphia. Probably the fan base that I can't stand the most. As a New York guy, I'm a Yankee fan, I'm a Giant fan, and a Ranger fan. So I don't like anything Boston or Philadelphia related, if that's not obvious enough. But in all seriousness, I did find one cool Philadelphia fan. He hosts the show Orange and Backcheck right here on the Hockey Podcast Network. Let's welcome in Bill. Bill, what's going on, my man? Thank you so much for hopping on. How you doing, my friend?
Oh, I am wonderful. It feels like this offseason. I don't know how you're feeling with the Rangers, or should I call them the Rags, as a Philadelphia guy. No,
you and the rest of the fan base and the Devils fan base too. So I can take it.
I feel like this has been an exhaustingly slow offseason. And I don't know if it's like how long the playoffs felt, but I'm ready for some hockey. Whether it's the Flyers, anybody, I'm ready for this season to just get started at this point. It's been way too long.
Hey, man, as long as we can agree on that, that's all I want to hear.
Exactly.
But let's dive into your Flyers. Obviously, a very up and down season, to say the least. They finished 6th in the Metro. They did finish above 500. That's the good news. The bad news, however, is they were in 3rd place for virtually the entire season. And then the second half comes, and all of a sudden, the wheels just fell apart. They fell to 6th place. They finished 38, 33, and 11, 87 points, 6 ahead of the Devils, who finished 7th in the Metro. So, Bill, just describe your overall feelings on last season when you guys were just such on a great high, not really that much of a talented roster, let's be honest with ourselves here, but you guys were riding so high in a playoff spot. Just describe the feeling of what the heck happened.
Yeah, I think it inevitably, because I think people entered the last season knowing that this team was not going to be a Stanley Cup contender, even maybe a playoff contender. But then expectations change in sports. We see it all the time when the expectedly mediocre team gets on a hot streak and they start being good, and they're like really shocking people, and their fan base is like, oh, we undervalued this team. So that was exactly what happened here in Philly, I would say. People got really, really excited. It was exciting around, like you said, around January, February is when everything started to fall apart. But holding on to that third spot in the Metro for 75-80% of the season really changed things around here in the sense of, wow, can they make the playoffs and can they win a round or two? Obviously, Boston was the big, bad, scary monster back then or back last season, but and the Rangers were obviously up there too with good teams. But like, as soon as the wheels started falling off, I personally was just kind of like, yeah, this is kind of the law of average always corrects itself or like rears its ugly head. And when teams like the Flyers knew that they could be all of a sudden really good and beating these teams, and they were beating some good teams, like they weren't like laying it down against the top tier playoff contenders or the Stanley Cup contenders last season. Like they were up there with them in the sense when they went head to head. And then all of a sudden, as soon as everything started falling apart, the fan base lost interest. I got incestually angry with them. Like it was just very disappointing. I was angry with Torts because didn't seem to be any sort of adjustment. And honestly, they didn't lose focus on the goal at hand because of their expectations changing. They still decided at the trade deadline last year to deal Sean Walker for a first-round pick. And that caused a lot of the downfall because you didn't have the sustainability that was Walker. And the fact that you got a first-round pick for him instead of holding on to him for the playoff spot kind of told you what they thought of this team. And that was, we're not good enough. Why are we trying to do something we're not? And that's what happened.
Do you think it should all fall, though, on the head coach? Because for me personally, as somebody who can appreciate John Tortorella for what he did with the Rangers, I know his coaching style. I know he has what it takes to light a fire under everybody, to say the least. But even still, if I'm going to answer that question, I don't think it's fair, only because I've said it before. At what point do we start blaming the players for not doing their job? Because, like I said earlier, this is a Flyers team that, look, I'm not going to call the players talentless. That's not fair. Players do have talent. You're in this league for a reason. But if we're being honest here, this Flyers team really does not have that much talent on it, especially going into this season. So do you blame it solely on the coach, or do you blame it on the players for not doing their job?
Yeah, no, this is definitely a players over coach thing. It's why no one in Philly was really calling for Torts' head to be fired. Like, I think we're going to get to that point at some point, and that's a debate for another time. Maybe we'll do that later in the show. But I think it really did fall on the players. I mean, Coots was injured for the beginning of the season. Sean Walker, like I said, was dealt at the end. And then you're missing the other big part that we haven't touched on the big part yet. You lost Carter Hart to the London investigation.
Yes.
And as soon as you lost Carter Hart, you lost sustainability at your goaltending. And yeah, Fedotov came in at the end of last season, which was a great surprise. But he was a relatively unknown. You were just excited to have him back. And that's the biggest question mark, not to get ahead of ourselves, but that's the biggest question mark heading into this season. What is the goaltending for the Flyers? Because there's a lot of question marks. You had sustainability there, and it blew up in your face because Carter Hart's a moron. And without getting into the specifics of that, obviously, that's what ruined it.
Listen, I don't mean to laugh, but just the way you said it sounded funny. But in all seriousness, we don't condone anything like that, and we do hope that justice is served, say the least. But yeah, definitely losing Carter Hart definitely was a big blow, considering the fact that he actually was playing decently. I never really trusted him to begin with, but at the same time, he looked like he was going to prove most of his doubters wrong. And then this whole thing happened with him, Michael McLeod of the Devils, and like 8 other players, I think. When that whole situation went down, what was your initial reaction?
Obviously disappointment. Like, you never want to have your player, whether it's the Flyers or any one of your favorite teams in the Philadelphia region or the New York region for someone like yourself. Like, you never want to have who you think is not just a player on your team, but a franchise player. Like Carter Hart was going to be here for a long, long time.
Yep.
If this never happened. And obviously, as soon as something like that happens, you burn the jersey, you get out of it, and you just kind of like what the Flyers did. They got out of the contract, and they now they're all unrestricted free agents or restricted free agents. I forget exactly what it was, but like he has no ties whatsoever to the Flyers, and that's fine by me. Like I don't want to have that kind of distraction on a team or in this league. Like the NHL already has enough problems like that in trying to grow its brand. Like this doesn't need to be attached to it. And that's what they did. They broke away, and good for them. So yeah, disappointment all around was my initial thoughts, especially as it got clearer and clearer where there was smoke, and when there's smoke, there's fire, because this was leading up to this, and people were just kind of mentally preparing like, okay, Carter Hart wasn't just on this roster, but he was seemingly a part of it. And that's a real shame.
On a lighter note here, let's talk a little bit about the Rangers-Flyers rivalry. A lot of history with these two teams. I know firsthand. Now, unfortunately for me, I've never actually experienced a Ranger-Flyer game in person. I would like to one day, even if it means me having to go to Philadelphia. God help me. But no, listen. Philadelphia is a really nice city. I love Philadelphia. It's got great people there. I just can't stand half their fan base. But with that being said, just describe from your perspective what the Rangers-Flyers rivalry means to not just the NHL, but the entire hockey world, because their AHL affiliates have a little bit of a rivalry as well. So just describe what that means from your perspective.
Yeah, it's always fun when you have an original six team rivaling with an expansion team in the Rangers and the Flyers. I think it's been a little one-sided, unfortunately, over the last couple of years.
Just a little bit.
I mean, like you said, if you come down to Philly, there's a lot of blue and white and red in the stands compared to the orange and black.
Which in all honesty though is very surprising.
It's shocking.
How does that work?
It goes back to like what the state of the Flyers has been over the last 5-6 seasons, a little bit longer than that, arguably. There hasn't been a lot of faith in the franchise because it got very corporate. Once Ed Snyder died, the team became very corporate and not very winning mindset, and that's a real shame. I mean, you can go back and listen to any one of our episodes from probably like around episode 100 and on, when Claude Giroux's era was coming to a close. Like the waste of talent that was to lose a guy like Claude Giroux, and not even, you had one real chance at it in 2010, obviously. And even then it wasn't Claude Giroux's team yet, but I digress. Like and the fact that whenever both the Rangers and the Flyers are good, the league benefits. You want those playoff matchups that we got in the early 2000s, in the late 90s, of these two teams, Lindros and Messier and all that stuff. Like that is what makes the league fun, and what makes the league great is when two teams from biasly, and you and I are both biased in terms of we're in the Northeast, and that's where the crux of this is: Boston, Massachusetts, Philadelphia, PA, and New York. Like that's where the money is, and that's what drives the country in terms of the league. So when these two teams are good, everybody wins. Like not just on the ice, or obviously not on the ice, but off the ice, everybody's winning. So I love this rivalry. I've been very fortunate. I've gotten to go to MSG once to see a Flyers Rangers game, and it's incredible up there. The atmosphere is incredible. It's obviously MSG. It's the Mecca. Like it's sports.
Keep
Mecca.
going.
It's amazing.
Keep going.
No, I know. I just hope it's still around. You always hear these rumors about Penn Station forcing people to move out, or forcing the teams to move out, and it's just one of those things where as long as they're playing in the Mecca in the Madison Square Garden, I'm going to try and go as best I can. And that's a lot of fun. And you got to get down here to Wells Fargo Center or whatever it's going to be, because it's no longer going to be the Wells Fargo Center after, I think, next season, 2 seasons from now. But either way, you got to get down here for a Flyers Rangers game.
That really is a shame. I mean, look, I'm so used to Wells Fargo Center, man. I mean,
yeah.
Do we know the official new name?
No, that hasn't been announced. It's the typical. Okay. They're getting out of it thanks to being a bank, and the banks are changing. Wells Fargo Center has gone through, I think, 4 or 5 name iterations since it was erected in '96. I can't remember what it was first called. It was called the Wachovia Center, then the First Union Center.
Yeah, Wachovia Center. I remember that too.
And then Wells Fargo. So it's kind of like, okay, the obvious choice is just make it the Wawa Center. Like that, like that just makes too much sense.
I mean, considering it started in Philly, it would make the most sense. But now all of a sudden they're all over Jersey.
Yeah. They're all up and down. They're in Florida, Delaware, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know the beautiful thing about being a sports fan? There's only 2 days the whole year without a game. 2! With so much happening and so much action, that makes just about every day game day at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. It really couldn't be any easier, any simpler. I am seeing, though, that you can bet the Florida Panthers to repeat as Stanley Cup champions at plus 900 for the 24-25 season, but that's just what I would bet on. What you would bet on is up to you. And if you want to know how simple it is, if you just place your first bet and bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Well, how do you do that? Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use our code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Blue Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Deposit and eligibility restrictions apply. See terms and responsible gaming resources at sportsbook.draftkings.com/hockey terms. This show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Question: what's something you'd love to learn? It could be a new language, gardening, or maybe how to finally beat your best friend in bowling. I know that's something I need to learn. But in all seriousness, one thing we should be learning about is how to take care of ourselves. You see, kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come at any age. I know for me personally, therapy has helped tremendously with my mental health for the last year and a half. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's completely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Plus, you can switch therapists at any time for no extra cost. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp because your mental health matters. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/THPN.
I'll be honest with you. I don't like when rivalries are one-sided.
Sure.
You know, don't get me wrong. I love it when we beat up on you guys, but at a certain point, it almost just isn't fair. You know, I want to see competitiveness. You know, and it seems like with the Rangers and Flyers recently, over the last 5-6 years, it's only been competitive from the Rangers standpoint. You know, and I'm not solely blaming it on, you know, coaching and all that other stuff, goaltending, you know, even though that is a big question mark going into the season. We'll talk about that later. You know, I just think that the Rangers at this point are better than the Flyers, and that's probably going to continue again this season. And, you know, Flyer fans are probably going to be disinterested, and I think it's kind of sad. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough because what I think may realistically happen in this season is more of what we saw at the end of last season in terms of painfully average, maybe a little bit below average because of the lack of talent. The fun thing is the biggest acquisition you made this season, or this offseason, I should say, was the sudden arrival of Matvei Michkov, who we didn't anticipate to see for another 2 years, maybe even 3 years because of the KHL contract.
Right.
Whatever is going on between the Flyers and KHL relationship is working for this team. And that's exciting.
I was going to say, I'll tell you what, Mitch Koff's going to be something really special in this league.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see him. Like, that's going to get fans excited. And it got fans excited. We had a ton of fun talking about it on the show on Orange Backcheck, and then just kind of just interacting with people on the streets and on Twitter or X, whatever the hell we're calling it at this point. Like, that kind of stuff is always a lot of fun when it's like the Eagles are obviously the number one team in this city, and then you have the Phillies who are really, really good. And when the other two are really good as well, that gets the conversation going. It's not stale. And that's what I'm looking to hope to expand on or get out of.
That's what I was going to say. At least you can say that the Phillies and the 76ers are at least competitive and in the postseason almost every single year. The one team that hasn't really put much of an effort in has been the Flyers. And I think that's kind of not necessarily hurting the city of Philly, but as far as their fans are concerned, I just think it's really turning them off in a way that they're just so disinterested that they just don't bother with the team anymore.
Yeah, that's 100. That especially like last year, they started to buy back in. Obviously, winning does that. Then they started to abandon towards the end of last season. But what Keith Jones, the president of hockey operations, and Danny Briere, the general manager, are doing is a slow burn. Like, that's why they got rid of Sean Walker. That's why they knew they had to trade him. He was the big piece at the end of or towards the trade deadline last season that would command a first round pick. And you got that. And the fact that you got that and didn't deviate from the course despite the success that you had will pay dividends. It's going to stink for the next year, I think. I think this year is going to be a little rough. But I don't think fans are losing that focus. I think they understand what this team is at this point, and they're fine with it because they know something is happening. The worst is when you get apathy. When fans are apathetic or apoplectic towards these franchises, then you have a problem. And we certainly saw that probably from like 2017 up until 2022, 23 late or early 2023. Even with that bubble, that Kakamimi bubble playoff that we had when the Flyers all of a sudden had that one seed after the round robin crap, and then they got blown out in Game 7 by the Islanders in the second round.
Yep.
Like that, those kind of things just kind of, they are short-term successes that are a lot of fun to revel around, but then you're crashing and burning back to earth very quickly. And that's what they didn't want to accept back then. And now that they have, firing AV and firing Chuck Fletcher and getting these two guys in and Keith Jones and even Torts. Like, I have my issues with Torts just like anybody, but he's the guy for this job. We'll see what happens after this season if they continue to struggle, but we'll see. That's the question mark going into this season. That's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely want to get more into your expectations later. But if I had to look at one positive here for the Flyers, at least from my point of view, you guys definitely have a more solid defense going into this season, with the addition of guys like Eric Johnson, Ryan Ellis, and Rasmus Ristolainen. I know they're not household names per se, but I think they're going to be sneaky, underrated good defensively. What do you think about that?
I hope. I mean, we have been, especially like Ristolainen's been hurt Ryan Ellis is obviously hurt. We don't know when he'll ever play again, if he'll ever play again. Like, it's just kind of who I'm very excited about, and it was part of the Cutter Gauthier trade. Jamie Drysdale has a lot of runway on this team.
He does.
He's a lot of fun to watch. I think his rib injury pushed him back a little bit. That's what sucked. I think it was a rib injury. Either way, he was injured for a little bit. I'm really excited about him. Obviously, Sanheim is the big name now. That's the guy. Ivan Provorov's no longer here after being traded 2 off seasons ago now, because I'm just counting this as the last off season now in 2024 because we're close enough to this season. But I do think, like, you typically, as my co-host Scott says, you have to build from the back to the front, goalie, defense, forwards. Now, because of their defense being pretty solid, I don't think it's solidified in the sense of, like, this group is going to win a cup in a year and a half, 2 years, whatever. But they have the foundation set, and now they got to find, what do they have in Sam Ersson and Fedotov? Do they have one of these two guys has to be the guy? And if they're not the guy, then what do you do? And I know Cal Peterson's out there, but he'll never play. I don't even think he's on the roster for next season. So it's kind of, we'll see. Like, that's the defense. You're right. It should be pretty good, which is a good thing, because that means you're probably not going to lose a ton of games in the sense of blowout losses, which is a big problem from 2 seasons ago or 3 seasons ago. So they'll be competitive. That's what matters. Like, as long as you're competitive and trying, that's what we'll fall in love with here in Philly. That's all we need.
Now let's get into your expectations for this season. Now, you mentioned a lot of big question marks going into the season. You mentioned goaltending being one of them, which I think is going to be massive. But I'm also looking at Torts. And the reason why I'm looking at Torts is because of, does he still have the it factor? Now, I'm not saying he's completely lost his touch, but he ain't getting any younger here. There's only so much that you can do as a coach to try and get this team motivated. And it seems like the players are not really taking his messages all to heart. If, for some reason, the Flyers, hypothetically speaking, finish or are in dead last by, let's say, January or by the trade deadline, do you see Torts getting fired? Yes or no?
No, I don't think he'll be a mid-season firing. I think he gets the runway for this 82-game slate, and then you kind of go from there. Okay. I do agree, though, that if there's not something to build off of, continuing to build off of, I should say, after this season, there might be a coaching change. Because what's so tough about rebuilds, especially in this Northeast where we're sports crazed more than anybody else, obviously also our friends up in Canada, like the balance between the timeline of a rebuild and getting back to competitiveness is kind of a sliding scale with fan bases. Like, not everyone locally here in Philadelphia is going to buy into what the Sixers did from 2012 to about 2015, 2016. Like, that is a long, long time in sports to watch a lot of losing. So to watch all that and then just kind of try and do the same thing on a shorter scale, like, that's why we see so many coaching changes, honestly. Like, 2 or 3 years is all you get. And if you don't show something in that 2 to 3 years, you're out of there. And the process doesn't start over again. That would be crazy. But I would not be shocked if this team is second to last or last in the Metro next season and a coaching change is made in April. Like, that would not shock me whatsoever. I would be very, very okay with it too, because I think this team might take a step back in the sense of not being a top 3 team. They should be a wild card team, a fringe wild card team. Like, to be clear, like, not guaranteed playoff spot going up against one of the top teams in the East, but they should be battling for a wild card spot this year.
Is that your official expectation for them
I
this
think
season?
that's my expectation.
Okay.
Obviously, I want to see how they look in training camp. I want to see what their thoughts are on goalie, because goalie's the biggest question mark. That's what I'm terrified of, because when you have two unknown, not even unknowns, but like, you know what Sam Ersson is. He got way too loaded up on in the second half. That's kind of a contributing factor for why he fell apart last year, because they put way too much on him. I think he ended up at 51 games, something like that, and he shouldered everything in the second half because of the Carter Hart situation. So I'm excited for Fedotov. I don't know what he is. I cannot tell you. He's going to be posting a 920 save average this season. I have no idea. I don't even know what Sam Erson's going to do, honestly, because I'm hoping he got healthy again to shoulder that load, because I'm hoping that he is the guy and Fedotov's his backup, and then let the chips fall where they may as the season progresses. If Fedotov rears his head as the guy, great, make the switch. Like, that's who becomes your guy and gets the bulk of the starts. But if Erson's the guy, he gets the bulk of the starts. Like, he should get a healthy amount of starts without fearing that he's going to be overexerted or exhausted. Like, and that was a huge problem last year.
I do have an interesting question for you. Literally just thought of this question before we wrap things up here. And I know it's going to be a little bit tough to answer, but as a Philly guy, out of all the 4 major sports in the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which one do you think wins a championship first?
Oh, man. The easiest answer is obviously the Phillies right now.
Right.
I want the Phillies to win a World Series. I really do. Because, obviously the Eagles are the creme de la creme. Nothing beats Red October. In the sense of, there's something about this area when the Phillies are in the playoffs in October that changes it for the better. And football's fun. Like, when the Eagles are in the playoffs, it has a very similar feel. But something about baseball, maybe it's just because it's America's game. It's America's pastime. That's really cool.
I agree.
I want the Phillies to win. So that's how I'm going to go with. I think the Phillies win a championship first out of the first four majors.
Can you imagine if we get a 2009 World Series rematch?
Yeah, exactly.
Phillies and Yankees again?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Phillies, Yankees, Phillies, Astros again. Obviously, they just lost 10-0, but they won that series 2-3. I want one of those rematches. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, just so we can beat up on you again. But no. Listen, in all seriousness, though, that it ought to be very interesting if we do get that matchup. But as far as the Flyers are concerned, I tend to agree with you. They should be at least battling for a wild card spot. They're definitely not a top 3 team in the Metro. I still think that's going to be, Carolina, the Rangers, and surprisingly the Devils, considering how much better they got in the offseason. Yeah. So
who's your team?
I wouldn't be surprised if they're battling for a second wild card spot at least.
Yeah, who's your team from last year to this year that's going to really step back? I think it's an obvious choice, but I'm curious in the Metro, just to focus on the Metro. Which team that made the playoffs? What was it? 5 teams in the Metro made it last season.
Yes,
I think it's obvious who's going to take a step back, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
See, now I went back and forth on this because I still think that Carolina is going to be a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I do have them taking a step back only because they lost a lot of bodies. And news just came out that, Jesper Fast is out for the season because of neck surgery. So that's a major loss for them. But the only reason I'm saying that they're still going to make the playoffs is because I believe in Rod Brindamore. He's a great head coach. I trust that he's going to get his players ready.
It's so weird how often he's discussed as a guy that's going to get booted out of Carolina.
Yes.
It's every year we go through it. And I'm like, what? Am I missing something?
I don't understand why, though. I mean, what's with the hatred?
I think it's just like again, we go back to how we started this episode. Like it's all about expectation setting. Like when when those expectations change, mindsets change, and you're like, well, why isn't this guy performing? And you're like, all right, let's get rid of him. And it's such a weird thing. I would not be shocked if they don't make the playoffs, if they take a step back. Brendan Moore.
Yeah, if they just flat out miss, he actually might be fired. I really hate to say that, but if he doesn't get, again, they lost a lot of bodies. It's a completely different Carolina team than what we've seen. But I still think they're a playoff team. I'll have official season predictions before preseason starts, but I'm not sleeping on the Hurricanes. I don't think anybody else should either. But if you're right, if they miss the playoffs, I can't even imagine what's going to go on in that front office.
Yeah. I think they still make it. My team that's going to fall apart, not fall apart, but like just take a step back strictly because of age. Nothing talent-wise. It's just like they're a team that hasn't made a lot of adjustments. They're aging rapidly, and they only have one guy that everyone's watching, and that's Washington. If Washington makes the playoffs again, I'd be shocked. It felt like they kind of snuck in there at the end of the season, 91 points. It's a pretty good season for the NHL.
Only to get swept by the Rangers in the first round.
Yeah. Like I am convinced they are all about their sole focus for this season as Rangers, or excuse me, as Capitals fans should be, when is Ovi going to break the scoring record? Or the goal scoring record?
Exactly. Yes.
That's the only thing they should be concerned about.
It's only a matter of time before it actually happens. The question
it's inevitable.
When will it be this season, or will it be next season after his contract is up? Because I think he said after the 25-26 season, he's done. So he's got to do it within this 2-year span.
Yeah, I'm certain that he will. So,
me too.
I think they are the team that slides out of the playoffs from last year, and that leaves an opening. Obviously, they were a wild card, so we have two divisions to worry about. But I'm curious if the Flyers can sneak it in there, or someone over in the Atlantic. That's kind of that's to be TBD. Like you said, we'll have to do our own season preview coming up on Orange and Backcheck towards the end of this month, or next month, I should say. So, very exciting stuff.
Well, I've been looking forward to that. Now, before we sign off for the night, tell people where they can find out more about your show and where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate it, Jimmy. You are a fantastic host. Thank you so much from the Blue Seats. As always,
I appreciate that.
We've done a couple of these now from our live shows for the Hockey Podcast Network, and now obviously this. You can find Orange and Backcheck anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Audible, all that fun stuff, at Orange and Backcheck on Twitter. Or X if you're kind of rolling that way and calling it X, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all of the good stuff. Just search Orange and Backcheck Podcast and we'll crop right up for you. We are planning for a new episode this coming weekend. On the 1st of September, we'll do a little thing. There's a local mall that is completely run down that Michkov is doing his first public appearance at. And I'm just like, why there? Why are you going to that area of the state, of the Tri-County area, or the Collar County area, and saying, here, Michkov, introduce yourself to Philadelphia at this rundown mall in Bucks County? Very, very untimely. So we're going to do a fun little thing of where should have Michkov actually gone in the city and all that fun stuff. And, a lot of good stuff. So, anywhere you get your podcast, it'll be a lot of fun. And we're just looking for, like I said, this offseason has been painfully slow. And I think it's because the Flyers made no moves. Their biggest acquisition was obviously Michkov, and then they signed Travis Connecting to a huge extension. Those were the two big moves, and that's all we had to look forward to. And then they happened relatively early on. I mean, the TK deal only happened like about a month ago now. I can't remember, but it was relatively
about a month ago. Yeah,
it was relatively middle or early in the off season, and it just dragged on from there because nothing happened. And
I mean,
I'm excited.
In fairness, though, Rangers didn't make any big moves either. The biggest move that they made was the Riley Smith trade, which I like. But even still, I do get from a Ranger standpoint why they didn't go big, because you don't want to mortgage your future. But anyway, I said my piece about that. Bill, it was such a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for hopping on. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but please come back on the show soon.
Oh, you are. Thank you so much. You're too kind. You're invited, obviously, onto our show. I'm not sure if you can hear my dog freaking out. That is my cue. I guess.
Hey, listen. Hey, the dog agrees. The dog agrees. We should do it again. But thanks, Bill. You're the best. I'll leave a link to his show down below in the description on YouTube and all audio platforms, so you guys can go subscribe. Really, really good stuff right there. He is Bill from Orange and Backcheck. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Hit that bell on YouTube so you're notified of every single episode. And subscribe on all audio platforms, Apple, Google, or YouTube Music, and Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And follow us on all social media, Twitter, Instagram, at BlueSeats94, and use the hashtag BlueSeats. And don't forget, use promo code BlueSeats on SeatGeek, all one word, BlueSeats, for $20 off your first purchase. Alongside Bill, my name is Jimmy. This is From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast. Go Blue Shirts, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Peace!